Ernie, did you ever find a copy of that inaugural edition for me?
Is it on?
I think we left off by the, did we do the Aruch HaShulchan on page 63?
No.
Okay, so let's pick this up with the Aruch HaShulchan. We're talking about the prohibition of eating foods that have been cooked by a Gentile. We talked about the two reasons. One, because of chasnus, intermarriage with Gentiles, and the other is the concern that maybe they will feed you a non-kosher item in the food. So the Aruch HaShulchan says, Rova poskim kosru b'tam yisur shloko is mishum chasnus. The majority of the poskim say that the problem with why the Chachamim prohibited cooked food by Gentiles is because we don't want you to socialize with them. It could lead to intermarriage. V'yesh merav b'seir shekos v'tam shliach lenu dover iser. Lagos Oshri in the Rashbam said that the problem was, since when you normally, like when you cook a stew or a cooked food, you can't see what's in there. You can't tell exactly what ingredients are there. It's not like we're going to see like when you bake bread. So there's going to be a nafkamina between baking bread and cooking food. Because baking bread, at least at that time, you could see all the ingredients. We'll see today it's more complicated. But at that time, there was a difference between, let's say, bread and let's say you were eating a cooked stew. Who knows what's in there? So there's a possibility that they might have put something non-kosher there. Because there is a leniency by pas. Pas akum, you're allowed to eat pas akum. That means as long as the ingredients are kosher, if the company is owned by a non-Jew, and even if it's baked by a non-Jew, it means the oven is started and the whole process is done by a non-Jew. As long as we know the ingredients are kosher, we're going to learn that such pas is called pas sakum, and maker adin is permitted. There are periods of time, for example, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where the Shulchan Aruch says you should be stringent and not eat pas akum during that period of time. But there's clearly a leniency regarding pas over regular cooked food. And the Aruch HaShulchan explains, because by cooked foods, we said that there are two problems, intermarriage and non-kosher foods. The pas, with bread, all you got to do is look at it and you can see exactly what ingredients are there. But that's not the case with cooked food, because it could be mixed in there. According to the Aruch HaShulchan, Rashi holds that the enactment of Bishul Akum was instituted for both reasons. But Pas Akum, on the other hand, is only forbidden because of intermarriage, since the concern of eating non-kosher is not applicable. The reason is that in those times it was easy to tell whether other non-kosher ingredients were added to the bread simply by looking at it. The footnotes say, of course, today advanced technology of food industry is no longer true, and all bread requires hashgacha to certify that all the ingredients are indeed kosher. The Piskei Tshuva explains that another nafkamin, another practical difference between the two reasons of chasnus versus non-kosher food arises in the case of a Jew who is a mumar or a heretic, meaning that he does not observe the Torah. Ayin v'her heitev shel marid shekosav the ikra gzeira isa mishum chasnus. Right, the main gzeira against pas about bishul akum was marriage. V'ayin b'sefer Tiferet Shlomo shekosav. The lefi tam zeh shori bishul shel mumer mishum chasvus leka. Therefore, if a non-religious Jew, someone who is we'll say a B'chalal Shabbos B'farhesia, who has, let's say, the status of a mumer. So there is no prohibition of marrying a non-religious Jew. So since the main reason for the Gzeira against Bishul Akum is the intermarriage issue, so the Tiferet Shlomo wants to say that that's another nafkamina in the various reasons. If the main reason is chasnos, then there would be no problem with eating food cooked by a non-religious Jew. However, however, the Beis Yosef says we have to be choishish for the other reason for the Isser, which is that perhaps you'll be fed non-kosher items. So lefizeh gam bishul shel mumer aser. Davi mumer l'chol Torah kula. If someone is a mumer l'chol Torah kula, like Shabbos, if someone is a mavchalo Shabbos b'farhesia, so publicly you're considered a mumer l'chol Torah kula, and therefore you have to be concerned since he doesn't care about kosher food. Shemiyach lenu dvar masurin, ayin shah. Ulefizeh hu adin mumer l'chalo Shabbos b'farhesia. Let's say we knew that he observed these issues of Bishul Akum or Pas Akum, but he didn't keep anything else. So Gam Kain b'Bishulo Osir. So based on this analysis, the food cooked by a non-religious Jew is a problem. According to Pischei Tshuva, the reason concerning intermarriage would not apply to a mumer, since a Jew is allowed to marry a mumer or his children. But concern would still exist that perhaps the mumer may use non-kosher ingredients when cooking. Practically, many poskim write that in a case of need, that means hefsid, meruba, right? One may be lenient when a Jewish heretic, one who publicly desecrates Shabbos or doesn't observe the rest of the Torah, cooks and eat the food, assuming that one verifies that all the ingredients are kosher. And that's how the Tzitz Eliezer, one of our modern day poskim. Zos Torah ha'oleh mibirarnu bazeh, she'ein mokum lochush mishum bishulei akum b'ashimurim shenasim u'mizbashim b'ati charoshes shebaleim porkei ol. He wants to say that Tzitz Eliezer lived in Israel. There are many factories that produced cooked food that sold in Israel. The workers in the factories are non-religious. Umachalei Shabbos kodesh b'farhesia rachman litzlan. Kishesh memuneh aleihem ben Torah. However, if we don't have to worry about the problem of Bishul Akum, because if there is a religious Jew, he means a mashgiach, who is appointed over them, who checks what's going on there. So based on that, there's no problem with Bishul Akum that Tzitz Eliezer says. However, Rav Ovadia holds that lechatchila one should try to be machmir and ensure that in a factory, the mashgiach should turn on the machines. And if it's at home, a religious Jew should cook the food. Rav Ovadia is worrying lechatchila about Bishul Akum when a non-religious Jew cooks the food. And therefore the mashgiach should turn on the ovens and the various things that are involved in cooking the food at the factory. Because then we'll see, that's one of the leniencies by Bishul Akum, that if a Jew participates in the cooking, we'll see to what extent he has to participate. Is it enough to just turn on the fire? We'll see soon whether that is enough. So the Abi Omer says, "Herachti bedin bishul mumer l'chalo Shabbos b'farhesia." Someone who's he's b'chalo Shabbos b'farhesia. Yesh bo din bishul legoyim. Velati b'kocha dehetera. And he wanted to say you could be matir. V'rat mios tov kotavnu Shekuf sa'ot shimurim anasim b'kibbutzim shel choshim. What about canned goods that are made on the non-religious kibbutzim? Nachon sharav mashgiach al hakashrus yafil et hakaftor hachashmali lebushulam. He says the mashgiach should press the button on the electric oven to cook it. The kolzot mishumios tov al tikra ra. It means if you have a way to be tov and not ra, you should always get a way to do that. He says, although the strict halachas that a non-religious Jews does not create bishul akum when cooking, nevertheless, since it's not difficult, it's proper to maintain a higher standard. Have the mashgiach turn on the switch.
It's very interesting, Ernie, about that. I'm sure we learn about yain nesech, that's a different issue.
Right, it's not so great. Yeah, the picture has
Chaim, I think it's going to be a very similar issue.
No, but I thought with yain nesech, someone who's not a shomer Shabbos that touches a wine that's not mavushal is the same as a non-Jew touching the bottle of wine.
No, we're going to see. We'll see. We're going to the same issues that we came across here, where the Piskei Tshuva says that basically when a non-religious Jew cooks food, you have a problem with bishul akum. It's going to be the same thing over there.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around. There was a non-issue for non-religious Jew does the cooking.
Well, according to the Piskei Tshuva, he has a concern, but he says He says in a case of need, you can be lenient.
Okay, so that's different than yain nesech, where I don't think it's lenient.
Well,
all right, we'll see.
Let's wait until we get there.
Yeah, okay.
But we're going to be dealing with it, no question about it. We will be dealing with a mummer, a mechal Shabbos before Hesi, what his status is regarding yain, no question about it. The leniencies described above apply only to a mummer who is not actively rebelling against the Jewish religion. He says, "Mechal Shabbos before Hesi nechleku aposkim im dino k'goy le'esor bishulo v'yesh shehe'elo shebesas hatzorach yesh lahakel." That in a time of need, you can be lenient. So let's explain why the poskim hold that today the non-religious Jew is not such a problem. And look, read along with me this footnote. It's probably the most important footnote we've read so far. The Sefer Kashrus adds the following: provided the Jewish cook is not reformed and is not one of those fighting against the religion. However, it must be remembered that the way many poskim in Israel view the reform movement is radically different from how it is often related to in the diaspora. In Israel, some of those associated with the reform movement are actively anti-religious and anti-Jewish, thus prompting some poskim to employ statements such as the one used here by the Sefer HaKashrus, who basically says that if you belong to one of those sects that are fighting religion, then Ein Chanami, there would be Bishul Akum. He says in those cases, however, the vast majority of Reform Jews in the diaspora have little knowledge of Judaism and do not engage in Jewish practices at all. In these cases, the halacha would not consider them to be fighting against the religion, but rather as tinokot shenishbu, a Talmudic concept of children taken captive when they were young against their will, and who do not have any significant knowledge of Judaism. Aside from this point, though the question of whether Bishul Akum applies to non-observant Jews is still an important one, Rav Binyamin Bar Shalom, in his 2-volume work on the laws of Bishul Akum, called Shulchan Melachim, discusses this question at length and cites numerous sources on both sides. He notes that poskim that are lenient concerning non-religious Jews today with regarding to Bishul Akum include Harav Vosner, that's the Shevet HaLevi, Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, who is the son-in-law of Rav Yashiv himself, and Rav Moshe Feinstein. So in addition to the considerations discussed above, some of the aforementioned poskim also mention a famous tshuva of Rav Yaakov Ettlinger, the Binyan Sion, that many non-religious Jews do not violate the Torah intentionally, but rather out of ignorance. And they do not have the same status as the classic individual who publicly violate Shabbos b'farhesia. Rav Bar Sholem also cites letters in the back of the Sefer from Rav Hershel Shechter and Rav Yisrael Belsky that the OU is lenient about this matter, though it may not affect the practical halacha in a factory setting, in any case, if there is no other kashrut supervision at the time. Meaning if there's no kashrut supervision in a factory setting, it's going to be problematic anyways, without the issue of bishul akum. But as you can see, the majority of the poskim, or a significant number of the poskim that we follow, are lenient regarding the issue of bishul akum, by it meaning, do you attribute bishul akum to the cooking of a non-religious Jew? So I think that's an important chapter that we just finished. Now, not all foods are forbidden al bishul akum, right? It seems like it's very wide in scope and appears to forbid any food cooked by a Gentile, but the Gemara in Avodah Zarah limits the parameters of the types of food to which it applies in two distinct manners. Says the Gemara of Avodah Zarah, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak Amar Rab, Kol hanechal kamo shehu chai, if something can be eaten raw and then you cook it, ein bo mishum bishul nochri, like a carrot, or we'll see anything that can be eaten raw and you cook it, there is no problem with bishul. What any kind of food is not brought up to the table of kings to be eaten on their table, either to dip their bread in it, right? And we're going to see, what does the getter of that Shulchan Aruch mean? Does it mean something that would not be served at a state dinner at the White House? Or that someone would never eat it? It's not a matter of what would be served at a state dinner, but maybe the royal family, somebody in the royal family or in the White House would eat it. We'll see what is the getter that actually limits this. According to the first version of the statement of Rav Shmuel, foods that can be eaten raw are not subject to bishul akum, even if they are cooked. According to the second version, foods that are not served at a king's table are not subject to bishul akum. Since this whole halacha is rabbanon, Rishonim such as Tosfos are lenient and accept both of these statements as halacha. So it's either or. If a food is either edible raw or not eaten at the king's table, it's not subject to the prohibitions of bishul akum. Says Tosfos there in Avodah Zarah, Posek Rabbeinu Tam, the Hilchas Kahani Trei Lishmi. Halacha follows both of the Lashonos in the Gemara. And therefore, if you have one of the reasons, nechal chai, ein olein, or that goes up, ein bo mishum bishul od dekachovim. The bishul sofrim halach achara meiko. Rabbeinu Tam is pointing out to us that all of these were gzeiros, that we shouldn't intermarry with them. None of this is midoraisa. So since you can be lenient regarding divrei rabbon. In fact, the Shulchan Aruch paskin like the Rabbeinu Tam. Dover she'eno nechal kamo shel chai, something that is not eaten raw, and it's ola al shulchan malachim, and you would serve it to a king. Shebishlu goy, and a goy cooked it. Afilu b'kli Yisrael v'beis Yisrael. Even if the goy cooked it in your house, and in a Jew's house, asur mishum bishul goy. So those are the ones. If you got to cook it because you can't eat it raw, and it's, in that case, that means to be chai for bishul akum, it has to meet both criteria. It has to be, cannot even be raw, and it must be able to be served at a state dinner. Although these categories are unanimously accepted, the parameters for how they are defined have to be examined further. Should edible raw be defined based on whether the majority of people in that locale would eat the food raw, or whether at least a minority of people would eat it raw? Gemara Avodah Zarah cites a dispute that appears to address this question, with regard to whether bishul akum applies to an egg. On one hand, most people do not eat raw eggs. But on the other hand, there are some that do. So in Avodah Zarah it says, Beitza Tzluya, if a non-Jew fries an egg, Bar Kapara Shari, Bar Kapara permitted it because he felt people ate raw eggs. Rav Yochanan Asar. And Beis Yosef ruled according to Rav Yochanan that an egg is not considered to be edible raw. Most people don't eat it raw. And Bishul Akum would apply to eggs. Right? Even though people do eat it raw, it's not considered an important it's not a significant manner of eating. So it's interesting to note that with regard to the laws of muktzah and Shabbos, an egg is not considered to qualify as a raw food, which is muktzah, since it's edible in extenuating circumstances. The operating definition for the concept of a raw may differ regarding whether it's muktzah or whether it's we're talking about cooked. So based on the Beis Yosef, the Aruch HaShulchan suggests that the criteria for whether a food is edible raw is determined based on the standard of the majority. Regarding this issue of what's considered, do people eat it raw or not, we go after the majority of people. If the majority of people don't eat this raw, even though there are yichidim that eat it, so if a non-Jew cooked this thing, even the guy who normally eats it raw would be usher to eat it because it's a low plug. And v'marov ochlin zekashul chai, if the majority of the population will eat it when it's raw, even though there's an individual person who personally he would not be able to eat it raw unless it was cooked. He would be allowed to eat it if a ox. So it's not based on the individual's approach. It's based on the majority standard. The botla daita etzakolota. That the concept that we refer to is if you go according to the majority, it's because botla daito, his personal opinion is bottle against everybody else. V'chein posuk echad migdolei achronim lepri chadash. Aval in medina achas ochla kishichaya umedina acheres ein ochlin osa rak mebushel ein nivtolin zeluzeh. Each community is its own community. If in the United States we do eat it, but in Israel they would not eat it raw. You go based on locale and locale. The Aruch HaShulchan explains when we talk about majority is determined by one's locale, and whatever the majority of people in that country or region deem to be a normal matter of eating, that's accepted as the operative standard for bishul. Based on this, the Sefer Kashrus rules that a food that is edible raw is not subject to bishul akum, even if cooked by a Gentile, in such a manner that its appearance is totally changed. I mean, you might think, if you don't see it the way, like if you take a carrot, whatever, and you completely cook it, it doesn't look like a carrot anymore, it doesn't make a difference. It's still permitted. Until it dissolves, so it remains permitted. One interesting application. Could the light be turned on higher? It seems to me. Oh, that's better. Let me sit on that side. Here, could you move this down? 1 second, everybody. One interesting application of this question addressed by Poskim today is whether fish is currently considered a food that is edible raw. Fish. Although normal fish is certainly cooked, sushi has become quite popular in many countries across the world. In addition to Japan, its country of origin. Does the fact that fish is eaten raw by many people in the form of sushi change the status of fish today? Some poskim, such as Rav Menachem Genak, who is the CEO of the OU, Kosher, argues that fish today indeed is not subject to the restrictions of bishul akum. Means if a non-Jew cooked fish, there wouldn't be a problem with bishul akum since fish today is eaten raw. Many poskim hold that sushi does not change the status of all fish. And Rav Yezer Malamed explains this approach in the following manner, in the Pnine Halacha. Lamrot sherabim noagim kayom lechol ufamim dagim chayim b'tzurot shonot kemo b'sushi. People do eat raw fish prepared in a certain manner. Chen yesh noagim lechol b'sar chai tchon. People eat steak tartare, right? Raw ground beef. Or prus duck, carpaccio, right? Which is also raw meat. He still says yesh isra b'shul legoyim b'basar v'dagim. He says there would still be a din that if a non-Jew cooked meat or fish, it would be osir mibushalaku. Hoil v'tzuras achilosan chai shona lechaluti. He says the manner in which we eat the raw meat is completely different. V'nechshevet kesug acher shel achila. V'lachein ein lach shivam kenechlam li'itim chai. Just the fact that sometimes it's eaten raw, we can't remove the issue. We can't remove the issue of bishul akum from those. Just because in certain way it's eaten, is batal mibasar v'dagim Mr. Bishul. Shechelak nichbad mimlechet habishul. He says one of the most, when you talk about chefs and cooking, habishul no adal basar v'dagim. I mean, if you watch any chef's show, on the Food Network, it's all about how do you cook meat and how do you cook fish. Those foods that are considered the most important foods are the way fish are cooked and the way meat is cooked. Onam besushi atzmo, lamrot sha'orez mevushal, ein isra bishulei goyim. He wants to say that if a non-Jew cooked the rice that the sushi is made of, that's not a problem. Hoil va'ikr hu adag she'ena mevushal. It's ikr v'tofel. It's the ikr v'tofel. What is the main thing and what is the side thing? So the fish, you eat it because of the fish, not because of the rice.
Ernie, can I interrupt you a second and ask you?
Of course.
Both about eggs and fish. Let's say you go to a hotel in Israel, right? And the people preparing the food in the dining room, whether it's eggs, are frequently Arabs. Or you go to a Pesach program and they're goyim doing the egg station or the fish grill. It's frequently the goyim who work for the staff of the hotel or the staff of the kosher program. Nobody's there.
Yeah, but there's always.
They have a mashgiach turning on the flame, but that's all. It's
so Bernie.
That's always. So the flame is on by the mashgiach.
Bernie, excellent question. And we're going to learn that if a Jew participates somewhat in the cooking process, so again, that removes the issur of bishul akum. Now the question will be, is turning on the flame enough? And we're going to see there's a dispute about it. So we will see. Some will hold that just by turning on the flame will be enough of the participation of the Jew, which removes the problem of bishul akum. So Bernie, if at that omelet station, where let's say the Arab is making your omelets, according to the Shita, which we're going to learn tonight if we get there, according to the Shita that says, as long as the Jew turned on the pilot light or turned on the oven there, that's considered that he participated in the cooking process, and there's no bishul akum.
So the same would apply in a home where you have a housekeeper that's preparing you eggs.
And the same would apply. Now we'll see in a minute.
Turn on the flame.
Bernie, some are going to hold that turning on the flame is not enough. Some say that the Jew has to stir it a little bit. Well, let's get to that. So
Bernie, let me hear again about sushi. The
Yes.
non-Jew can cook the rice.
It's not bishul akum.
Okay,
The rice
and the
is
fish,
not because
and
it's
the fish
kosher.
itself.
And the fish,
It's not cooked altogether. It's raw
not
fish.
cooked. So there's right and
So
echanami.
there's no issur for a goy to cook the rice and assemble the sushi and make the sushi.
Correct. He didn't cook it. And if he cooked the rice, well, first of all, when we go to a caterer and they have a non-Jew doing the sushi, if it's a Pat's caterer, the rice was cooked by a Jew.
Okay.
So remember, there's a problem because you can't. This doesn't allow us to go eat sushi somewhere because of the knife problem. Because the knife has this shuman of not shrimp and non-kosher thing, and it's going to be a problem because also it's spicy. It could go into the whole thing. It's also kulo. It's on the klipa.
Are you on mute?
So right, Sydney?
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, but in Echanami, they want to say here that the rice is tofel, and therefore there's no bishul akum. That's what the Pnei Halacha says. I don't know what the other post can say about it, but that's what the Pnei Halacha says. And Bernie, good question, and we'll get to the detailed answers to your question hopefully tonight. Maybe not. We'll see. But obviously, these are very relevant simonim for us, all of us. So we went through a little bit into the Gedorim of what is meant if something is eaten raw or not. Now let's discuss what does it mean, oila al shulchan malachim, right? The criteria of which foods qualify as being served at a king's table or the table of another important dignitary, such as a president or prime minister. In addition, the status of some foods in this regard may change over time, depending on what is considered sufficiently fancy dish to serve to a king. Does the halacha change accordingly as well? We seem to have an answer to this question in an Aruch HaShulchan concerning potatoes. Tapuchei adama, nir laniu daiti. Now the Aruch HaShulchan passed away in 1908. So the Aruch HaShulchan said that in his humble opinion, the Zem Mikri ain't all in al Shulchan Malachim. Potatoes are not served to kings. In Bishal Agoy Otam Rak B'mayim Bilvad, if the non-Jew just cooked the potatoes in water, or afa otam, or bake them, muterli Yisrael ochla, the Jew would be allowed to eat it. The Adua, I'm sorry. Before we get to this, I want to read the Shevet HaLevi, who argues that the majority of people in most locales in the world would not eat sushi, therefore fish is still subject to bishul akum. Also, Rab Sholem Fishbane of the CRC argues that sushi does not change the status of fish, since many people today, even today, will not eat sushi. Sushi can only be made out of the freshest fish, and sushi can only be made together with other foods, not alone. So there's other opinions that are more stringent regarding sushi. So back to the Aruch HaShulchan. So he says that if a non-Jew cooked potatoes or baked them, the Jew could eat them. The Adua Shiachila Pshuta. It's eaten by very simple people. Only the lower class of people eat them in large numbers. Because of our poverty. Even though wealthy people occasionally eat it, that's just because there are potatoes in the market. It's not like the wealthy people will buy potato because it's such an important food. It certainly is not going to be brought up onto the king's table. Is a pas, not for them to dip their bread in, or to as a sort of a side dish to their meat. While they're being cooked, while they're soft, that the dignitaries would place them, they would spice the potatoes and put it into another dish. But it was not served to them on a regular basis. He found the Chayei Adam, right, Rav Danziger, in the Chochmas Adam. He lived about 100 years before the Aruch HaShulchan. That he said that in that time, 1800, they did serve potatoes to the kings. The potato was brought from North America. The potato is not indigenous to Europe. It was discovered by the Spanish when they came to North and South America, and then was exported back to Europe. So potato, just like the tomato, was also found in America, not in Europe, and eventually sent back to Europe. And therefore, there was a time where the potato was a delicacy. But now, Aruch HaShulchan says, 100 years later, in the early 20th century, the potatoes are planted everywhere. It's a very simple food. People that are very finicky will say, throw it out. So we see from this Aruch HaShulchan that halacha changes. According to the Aruch HaShulchan, although the potato may have been considered an important food when it was first introduced in Europe, and through the time of the Chachma Sada, by his time, it was a simple food eaten by the common folk and would not have been served at a king's table. Therefore, the Aruch HaShulchan claims it's not subject to bishul akum. However, in contemporary times, the potato has once again become a distinguished food, and it is served at fancy dinners. People will serve a beautiful baked potato stuffed with everything on a fancy meal. So that's clearly exists today. Therefore, poskim today do consider it to be subject to bishul akum. The footnote says, it should be noted until the 18th century, potatoes were common in England and Spain due to their conquest in North America, where the potato originated, but it was not eaten in the rest of Europe, and they were treated with suspicion. In the 17th century, it was indeed primarily used as a staple food exclusively by the poor. At the beginning of the 18th century, potatoes began to be used by kings and royal class as well, following Louis the King, the 15th, and then they began to spread across the kitchens of Europe. However, people refrained from eating them in Russia and Belarus, where the Aruch HaShulchan lived, and even referred to them as the apple of the Satan, due to the negative association Russians had with objects that came from underneath the ground. This is the basis for the comments of the Aruch HaShulchan here, and the difference between his approach to potatoes and that of the Chachmas Adam, who lived in Vilna in the early 1700s.
Guys, sorry, can people take away their iPhones away from their iPads? There's really a lot of back static coming onto the shiur.
Then it says another interesting question is whether potato chips are subject to the restrictions of bishul akum. On one hand, they are made out of potatoes, but on the other hand, their form is totally changed from that of a potato that would be served at a king's table. Rav Belsky is quoted as holding that they are not subject to bishul akum, while Rav Moshe Feinstein may have felt that they are. Okay. Says the Sefer HaKashrus, Hagdarat davar ha'oleh al shulchan melachim tluya lema'aseh b'makom uvizman. This parameter of whether a food is brought onto a king's table, it depends on place and time. V'yeshnam dvarim shemishtanim la'oram tziyot ha'achshaviyot kimufurat ba'ara, and there are things that will change based on the current fashion. Rei Aruch HaShulchan, he gives us the example of the Aruch HaShulchan. Shebavar tapuchei adama v'sha'uvit, which are green beans. Nechshavu keinam olim ha'shulchan melachim. U'ledivra Aruch HaShulchan u'machal pashut me'od, is a simple food. U'lamaisa kiven shemagishim b'tzurat shonot tapuchei adama v'sha'uvit shuv nechshavim l'dat haposkim k'olim ha'shulchan. The Sefer HaKashrus says today, green beans and potatoes are served on a king's table. Bichlal ze pitriot v'tiras, corn and mushrooms. Shemuvadim u'mugashim b'tzurot me'od miuchadot, gam al shulchanot melachim v'sarim. So they're various corn preparations and mushroom preparations that are served to kings, certainly. He says, orez, rice, gam ken nachshav kayom k'ol ha'shulchan melachim, is considered something that would be put on a king's table. Achein, kidniot shonot, k'gon hummus, achein falafel, einam b'chlal b'shul goyim. Hummus And falafel would not be considered something that go on a king's table. Sukar, v'chein shokolat, eina nachshavim olam shulchan malachim. Chocolate and sugar would not be considered. Sardinim, einam olam al shulchan malachim. Sardines are not served to kings. V'kach noagu go'anim et tzadikim. That great Rabbanim in the past would eat sardines even though they were cooked by non-Jews, because they held that it was not oil al shulchan malachim, and therefore there was no bishul akum.
That was the Shalashuda's staple.
Prat l'dage tuna shetzrichim bishul Yisrael dafka. But tuna fish had to be cooked by a Jew. We should note, because we know why that is. Because remember, we learned when you cook tuna, it's very difficult to know, based on its color, whether it's kosher or not. So we can't rely on somebody who's not Jewish. We should know that although the Sefer HaKashrus holds that tuna fish is considered to be fit for a king's table, some North American kashrus organizations, such as the OU, hold differently. Essentially, the halachic position of the OU is that canned fish does not become forbidden as a result of bishul akum, since the fish is not suitable for a state dinner. By the way, one of my patients is a mashgiach. He goes to the Far East and serves as mashgiach for large kashrus organizations where a lot of the canned fish is produced. Those cans are produced in a way that the fish is cooked in the cans. It's not, the can isn't just the packaging, but the cooking process occurs while they're in the can. So these fish are cooked. So this argument is strongest for sardines, which are not gourmet fish. Indeed, the Lavushe Mordechai testified that many European Torah scholars and great tzaddikim ate sardines, which were prepared by Gentiles, though this was not a universal practice. Tuna and salmon are higher quality fish, and tuna steaks and baked salmon are served at elegant dinners. Nonetheless, the manner in which canned fish is prepared renders them inappropriate for a meal of the aristocracy. A gourmet chef would not attempt to prepare an exquisite fish platter with canned tuna, salmon, or sardines. Coupled with this is the ruling of Rav Moshe, mentioned earlier, that bishul akum does not apply to a factory. We're going to see later on in a footnote that the whole issue of chasnus doesn't hold in a factory, because you don't even know who the non-Jew is. Chasnus is when you sit down with a non-Jew that you know there's going to be a chasnus. So one of the sfars of Rav Moshe by factory things was that you don't know who that person is. There's no contact between the person. So that's one of the leniencies by a factory worker. So then it says, in the case of tuna, there is an additional mitigating factor. Unlike salmon and sardines, which are first cooked in the sealed can, tuna is steamed in a steam chamber before it is packed and recooked in the can. It is questioned whether food that was steamed by a non-Jew is prohibited because of bishul akum. The Shulchan Aruch makes clear that smoking something does not constitute bishul akum. So for those of you who like smoked meats, it seems like if a non-Jew smokes the meat, that's not bishul. So therefore, by steaming something, it's also not bishul. It's debatable whether steam has the same status. However, Rav Yitzchak Weiss, Dayan Weiss, the Minchas Yitzchak, rules that there is no bishul akum for products steamed in a factory, since there are two uncertainties that coincide. It may be that there's no bishul akum for steam processing, and it may be that there's no bishul akum in a factory where the workers are unknown to the consumer. Although we would not rely on either of these alone, Rav Weiss allows a lenient ruling when both factors are present. So that's a very interesting halachic approach. Another aspect of the rule of being served at Shulchan Malachim, a king's table, is that it's not so clear exactly how to define the term. Does it refer to any food that would be eaten by a prominent dignitary or equivalent of a king at any meal? It means, would President Trump go down for breakfast and have something? Or does it refer to food served at an official state dinner, right? When the president of France comes to the White House and they have a state dinner, is that what's referred to as oila l'shulchan malachim? Right? That's a big nafkamina. So Rav Chaim Jachter notes in Bishul Akum that this issue appears to be subject to a machlokas achronim. A most significant exception is that the food must be ola al shulchan malachim, suitable for a king's table. This rule can be interpreted in two ways. The Chazon Ish believed that it refers to food that is not of poor quality and would be eaten by a very wealthy person. The Chazon Ish ruled that canned sardines cooked by non-Jews were forbidden because the King of England eats sardines for breakfast. It's not that the King of England would serve sardines at Buckingham Palace at a royal state visit, but he would eat sardines personally. And the Aruch HaShulchan seems to agree with this strict rule in the Chazon Ish. Rav Schwab notes that many of the great Rashi Yeshiva of pre-war Eastern Europe ate sardines cooked by non-Jews. The practice of the Rashi Yeshiva appears to be in accordance with Rav Soloveitchik's interpretation of this rule. Rav Soloveitchik believed that Ol al Shulchan Malachim means that the food has to be suitable to be served at a state dinner. Rav Soloveitchik's interpretation has great implications, as according to his approach, almost no canned food would be included in the Bishul Akum prohibition, because food served at a state dinner is cooked fresh. According to Chazon Ish, any food that is of good quality that would be eaten by a king or high dignitary at any meal, even breakfast, would be subject to Bishul Akum. According to Rav Soloveitchik, on the other hand, only foods that would be served at a fancy state dinner included, which limits the types of food that would be included in the Yisur Bishul Akum. It would seem that the more accepted practice today is to follow Rav Soloveitchik. This approach is expressed by Rav Moshe Heinemann of the Star K in the following article on Bishul Akum. The prohibition of Bishul Akum does not apply. Foods that are not prestigious and would not be served at a king's table when hosting an official state dinner, such as baked beans or cornflakes. These foods are permitted because a person does not experience deep feelings of gratitude and appreciation when someone warms up a can of string beans for him. Therefore, cooking non-prestigious food would not bring on feelings of closeness between preparer and recipient. Any food that would not be served at a wedding feast because it is not elegant, like donuts, would certainly not qualify for Bishul Akum. The Star K asked the White House executive chef what the White House banquet policy is regarding the use of canned products for state dinners. A specific question was, what is the policy regarding canned cranberry sauce? We also asked whether potato chips are served at state dinners. The chef's response was as follows: we would serve whatever the guest wants. However, we never serve potato chips, nor do we ever use canned goods. Everything is prepared fresh. Now, what about liquids, cooking liquids? Does Bishul Akum apply to liquids such as coffee? That may indeed be served at fancy state dinners. The Aruch HaShulchan reports that all of the poskim were lenient about this, since the coffee beans are considered botel to the water found inside, and the water is certainly not subject to Bishul Akum, right? Because water is drunk raw, right? Water fits the criteria of Nechal Kshu Chai. And then the question is, what about the coffee? So they would say the coffee is botel. For example, when you drink beer, why isn't beer a problem with Bishul Akum, Bush or Heineken or all of these beers, right? Mishum Bishulei Akum Tikomoda Tvua, right? The hops, the grain that are put in is betela lamayim. It's been calculated that it's bottles vastly less than echad b'shishim, and therefore le'inyan bracha marvichin alam shakol. Since it's mizbatel regarding the bracha, it's mizbatel regarding the bishul akum. V'chein muter lishtos kave v'shokolada b'lo chalav v'nei shebotel amay. The coffee is bottled to the mayim. The chalav is probably a problem because of chalav Yisrael, but not because of cooking. Now, Rav Ovadia also writes that it's entirely permitted to drink coffee prepared by a Gentile. Sheila, em muter lishtos kafe, shnizbash alidei goy, or yesh b'zeh mishum isra bishul goyim. V'asek levodazar onru, kol davar shenechel kamoshu chai, ein bo mishum bishul goyim. Sometimes the muter lishtos mayim roschim. You can drink hot water. Shir ticham goy, that a non-Jew heat it up. Ve'ein ba mishum bishul goyim. There's not this prohibition. Ov efshar lishtosam gam lefnei retichosam. Since you could drink the water before you cooked it. Vein lesor shecher shel tvua, beer that was made with grain. Mishum bishul goyim sha'afal pisha tvua inon echeles k'shuchai. Even though we don't eat hops raw, because makom hoil ubetel gaba ma'imlin bracha. Sha'akol yebedvaro she'en mevarchim al shechar sa'oirim boy minim zoynes shubirchas atvua kach batla tvua gaba ma'imlin in Yisrael bishul goyim. Just like we don't make a mizonos on beer because the grain is mizbatel to the water, we say shahakol. So similar, there's no problem with bishul goy. Mikan yesh lilmod dam le'inin hakafe sha'afal pishen hakafe nechal. Even though coffee beans are not eaten raw, mikol makom achar shakafe tofel legabi amayim. He says the coffee is tofel regarding the water. The water is ikr. Le'in shetzarich levarach al shtiyas hakafe sha'kol nidvaro. Lachen gam le'inin isra bishul goyim nechshav amayim le'ikr. So regarding bishul akum, it's also considered the water is ikr. U'memela en isra b'shtiyas hakafe b'din bishul goyim. B'sikum, in summary, mutar lishtos kafe shel goyim, ve'en lachush b'zalisha b'shul goyim. The cost of achronim sheken poshet aminig b'chol ha'makamos. The minig is widespread. V'malach rofefes b'yadcha. If you see it's a carbon halacha, tzeir ehei chatzibur noagim v'noagim. Look at the people. Everybody drinks coffee. V'noagim. Harotz lahachmar latzmo tavel of brach. Somebody wants to be machmir, he can be machmir. On the other hand, the Chassam Sofer wrote that coffee is permitted when prepared by a Gentile only when the coffee beans do not dissolve in water. The Shevet HaLevi cites this rule of Chassam Sofer, concludes that concerning instant coffee where it does dissolve, the Chassam Sofer would be machmir. Therefore, he states that one who is lenient has upon someone to rely, but a God-fearing person should be stringent. The Nescafe.
What's the reason though?
Because
Some Sofer's reason.
Because the coffee beans don't dissolve, and therefore you have the beans, and they're there, and they've been cooked.
But instant coffee, it's already no longer has the characteristic of a bean. It's a ground grain.
Yeah, but it's being cooked. So he says since now it's being dissolved. So in Cain the Nescafe, apple pishin is bashel kvar bebeis charoshes, even though it's cooked in the factory. Actually, not say avaka kafenta becomes dust. It won't help us regarding later on cooking. The osir lefi tamo shalach Chassam Sofer is because Chassam Sofer said if it doesn't dissolve, if as long as you still can see the coffee bean, it's permitted when you still see the coffee bean. But if it's dissolved, says Chassam Sofer, it was problematic. And even though there are people who are lenient, they don't accept this chidush of the Chassam Sofer. Everyone accepted the Tosfos that said the coffee is bottled to water. We're talking about the Shevet HaLevi, Rav Vosner, who's the Chassidish Rav in Bnei Brak. So he said, if you want to be machmir like Chassam Sofer, Tovol of Brach. The widely accepted practice is to be lenient about drinks without any hesitation. What time is it? Okay. So
So to summarize.
next week, we will talk about when bishul is permitted. So for example, how can the Jew participate in the cooking process? Is it only